Hey everybody, Rosematter here, and welcome to part 9 of my Steins Gate Zero Let's Play. So things have just been getting crazier since the reveal of Dr. Leskinen not being who we thought he was. Well, I had a feeling from the beginning he seemed just a little too good to be true, but it turns out that he is interested in Okabe's knowledge of things, and that's why he got him to work with Amadeus. And then, of course, like, there's Maho. She was dealing with the MIB, who are trying to take Kurisu's laptop. Is Dr. Leskinen a part of that? Is he aware of what's going on with that? I would assume so, because he and Maho work very closely together, so he must know that she's got Kurisu's laptop. And Maho now knowing all the stuff about, like, Kurisu with the time machine, with, you know, who her father was. So now Maho's AI knows this, so I'm sure Dr. Leskinen knows about this. Anyway, they're back in Japan now, and Dr. Leskinen is trying to get more information out of Okabe. And meanwhile, we also had Kagari came back. Turns out she was the person that's been following Suzuha around, trying to stop her from changing the future. Because, yeah, Kagari doesn't want Suzuha to change the future, because it's going to screw up with, like, her and Mayuri. And she might never meet Mayuri. And also she said something about, like, how God doesn't want that to happen. It's very odd. But anyway, so Kagari, like, turns out that she tried to kill Suzuha, ran off, and when she was a kid, and now she's back trying to take out Suzuha to stop her from, like, changing the future. So now we got that to deal with. But Suzuha will be going back to the future soon. She said she was going to be going in July. So I assume that this story is going to be coming to an end very soon. So will this be the episode before, you know, the last episode of this specific route? I'm not sure, but I'm excited to see how it's going to play out, so let's get back into it. When July came, the sun shone down even harder on eastern Japan. Summer was truly here. The news had been saying for days the heat island effect might make this the hottest summer in years. And yet, Okabe's still walking around in his all-black suit. And then, on the first Sunday in July, I met with Maho and Akihabara. I was waiting at the open cafe at the UPX when Maho arrived. She was a little late. Oh my gosh. When she's not wearing her jacket, you really are aware of just how tiny she is.
Hisashiburi.
She ordered an iced coffee and took a deep breath.
と言っても、いつもビデオチャットで顔は合わせてるが。
そうね。あまり久しぶりという感じはしないわ。
Her habit of paying no attention to her clothes or looks hadn't changed at all in the last 6 months. People were going to think she was an elementary school kid who decided to go play at a friend's house. But it would upset her if I said that, so I never would.
まさかこっちに来てるとは思わなかったよ。偶然、レスキネン教授と会わなかったら、今も知らないものだった。
It's like, does Maho, is she aware that Dr. Leskinen definitely has ulterior motives? She literally heard him talking about Okabe in a very serious, about the things like, I don't think he knows what's happening, we gotta go pay him a visit. I know that could be interpreted as maybe not as nefarious as it actually is, but is she being kind of, I don't know, threatened to go along with this, or does she truly have no idea that Dr. Leskinen is, like, doing other things, or he probably has other ulterior motives?
落ち着いたら連絡するつもりだったのよ。
Or maybe there's a reason she didn't get a hold of Okabe's, like, she knew something bad was going to happen, so she didn't want him to know they were there.
クリスのことで定期的な連絡はいずれにせよしなければ
the
なら
whole
ないの
point
だ
that
し。
they were going down there for, well, he said he was going for another reason, but he also was like, oh, I'm also going to get in contact with Okabe about Kurisu.
今回は新型脳炎の研究だって。
レスキネン教授はね。私はその助手という立場だけど、どちらかというとアマデウス担当。何か不具合はない？と言っても、これもいつも報告は受けているから、大体の状況は分かっているつもりだけれど。
ああ、特に問題ない。最近はクリスの相手をするのに苦労してるけどな。
ちょっと。
I heard a voice from my smartphone, which I placed on the table.
苦労ってどういう意味？
I'd left the Amadeus app turned on. Of course, Kurisu could hear everything we said.
最初に会った頃よりちょっと口調がきつくなってきてる気がする。
あんたが勝手に私にビビってるだけでしょ？
かもな。
It was turning into our old relationship in the Alpha worldline, where we fought all the time. I was starting to lose track of whether that was a good or a bad thing for me. I thought I was trying to forget about Kurisu.
ヒアジョーさんは初めて会った時の方が口調はきつかったな。
あれは
初対面の人には先輩はきついのよ。なぜかというと
年相応に見てもらえないから。
The two of them spoke in unison.
だからついカリカリしちゃうのよ。ある程度親しくなれば容姿のことも言われなくなるでしょ。だから心穏やかに話せるというだけ。
I guess I was right not to comment on her outfit. That was a close call.
アマデウスの話に戻すけど、クリスの口調がきつくなったというのは面白い兆候だわ。私や教授の前では見せない一面なわけでしょ。それだけ深く心を開いているとも言えるかもしれない。
開いてません。
Maho simply smiled and ignored her.
そうした心の動きをプログラムとして解析できるから、私や教授と話しているだけでは決して見られなかった変化だわ。それだけで岡部さんにテストを続けてもらった価値もあるというものよ。
そんなものか。
レスキネン教授もその点を高く評価していたわ。
過大評価だと思いますが、実際私と話す時も文句や愚痴が多いですし、あまり男らしくないというか。
Well, I knew my personality had gotten a bit negative, especially given what I'd been through. But did she really need to say that to Maho right now? An eye for an eye it is, then.
ちなみに今まで報告していなかったことがあるんだが。
何かしら。
これはおそらくヒアジョーさんやレスキネン教授も把握していないことだと思う。
Uh-oh, what's he gonna say about Kirisu is an at-channeler. She's a normie, a normal woman, or a mainstream woman.
待って、あんた何の話をしようとしてるの？マホ先輩や教授が把握していないことって私についての？
It'd be funny if Kurisu and Okabe, they both took turns just telling Maho about embarrassing things about each other.
栗ご飯とカメハメハといえばわかるか？
Curry Gohan and well, Curry Gohan. I know that that's from like Gohan and that is from like Dragon Ball. A few weeks ago, I'd actually searched for Curry Gohan and Kamehameha. Oh my gosh, I can never say that word. Kamehameha on a whim. It was the handle Kirisu would use on @channel when she was still like, oh, so she's a Dragon Ball fan, huh? Interesting. An online nickname. Oh, handle is an online nickname. It's rare for people to use online nicknames on boards like @channel. If a user does not pick a nickname, they'll simply be displayed as anonymous. Oh, I wonder if that's going to be her... Is that going to be her password? From what I'd seen, the comments started in summer of 2008, then abruptly stopped in July of 2010, and then started up again in December of that same year. Even now in July 2011, they were still appearing. If it wasn't Kirisu's ghost and it wasn't an imposter, then the one who could be writing those posts were...
Okabe Rintaro さん、ちょっと二人だけで話をしましょうか。
Just, I'll fucking kill you. I know I'm an AI, but I will kill you somehow.
さすがに黙っているのはまずいんじゃないか？
マホ先輩に報告するなんてもっとまずいわよ。
なんで？
私がアートチャンネルを見てることは一言も教えてないからに決まってるでしょ。
It's got to be connected to her password on her laptop, right?
堂々としていればいいじゃないか。アットチャンネルを見るのも書き込むのも別に犯罪じゃないんだし。そうだろ？アットチャンネラークリス。
あんたね、次にその呼び方したらあることないことアットちゃんに書き込んでやるわよ。
それこそ犯罪一歩手前の行為だろう。
She's like, who's gonna convict me? I'm an AI. I can't go to jail. I couldn't help but laugh. Conversations like this brought back so many memories. I used to be so full of myself that I tick off Kurisu all the time.
ねえ、一体何の話？
何でもありません。気にしないでください。海馬からきれいさっぱり今日の記憶を葬り去ってください。
So now Maho's gonna know that she's been going on at channel and posting. That's crazy. I know there's a whole thing about like bots are an issue on like on websites, but just the idea of a self-aware bot or an AI, that's a pretty crazy thing that could actually be something if it's not already something that's happening now in the near future.
隠していたっていつかはバレるぞ。
あんたはいいから黙りなさい。
And then there was a whole thing about, too, you can't delete people's memories. Now, this is going to be an issue if Maho knows that Dr. Leskinen is looking into potentially trying to get into the laptop, but maybe Maho could use this to get into Kirisu's laptop if Okabe still has it.
やっぱりあなたたち、半年前よりずっと仲良くなっているわね。
あ、先輩、すみません。
え？どうして謝るの？
あ、いえ、せっかく岡部と真帆先輩久々に会ったのに私ばかり話してしまって。というわけで、あとはお二人でごゆっくりどうぞ。
別にそんなつもりで言ったんじゃないわよ。
それもこれも岡部が変なことを言い出したせいね。
そうなのか。栗ご飯とカメハメハ。
お願いだから言わないで。
Just like the real Kurisu, she was strangely obsessed with hiding the fact she was an at-channeler.
ちょっと頭を冷やしたいので一度切りますね。失礼します。
Kirisu disappeared from the screen. Kirisu had been kind of rude lately, so it felt good to have a chance to get back at her. If I overdid it, she was probably going to hold a grudge, so this was likely a good place to stop.
栗ご飯って何なのよ。
どうしても知りたかったらクリスに聞いてくれ。
If I explained it, she'd probably get mad and refuse to talk to me again.
それで今回はどれぐらいの間こっちに滞在することになりそうなんだ？
前よりも長くなるかもしれないわね。レスキネン教授が研究している新型脳炎は未だに詳しいことがほとんど分かっていないようだから、もしかしたら私だけ先に帰らされる可能性もあるけど。
時間があったらラボにも顔を出してみるといい。ダルやマユリもきっと喜ぶはずだ。
マユリさんはともかく橋田さんはどうかしら。
Maho was finally starting to understand Daru's true nature. Speaking of Daru, he should be on a date with Yuki Amane right now.
ちなみにクリスのノート PC はその後どうしたの？
あれは
Oh,
破棄したよ。
he destroyed it. Maybe he's lying. Maybe he's just saying this.
それが一番いい判断だった
So
んだ。
maybe in the other timeline,
前にそう
we're
話
not
しただ
going
ろ
to do
う。
that. Maybe we're actually going to get into it.
ええ、そうね。
She looked down, a sad expression on her face. I told her I was going to do it ahead of time, but it still must have upset her to see one of the last things she had to remember Kurisu by destroyed. About half the seats at Go-Go Curry were full. It was Sunday, but it was also after 2 p.m., so the lunchtime rush was over. Suzuha was sitting at the restaurant's far edge, a baseball cap pulled down over her face. She was hiding her face with the cap and carefully watching a couple sitting nearby.
お待ちどおさま、メジャーカレーです。
Major curry, one of the items on the go-go curry menu. It consists of an extra large portion of rice, a pork loin katsu, chicken katsu, hot dogs, fried shrimp with tartar sauce, and a boiled egg. They had me in the first half. It sounded delicious until you started getting into putting the tartar sauce on curry. The hot dogs also, I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. I do like fried shrimp. Half of that sounds good. A cheerful employee put down 2 giant silver plates, or trays more accurately, in front of them. Suzuha could see the other customers looking at them and whispering. The couple really stood out after all. Oh! They did say that that Daru and Yuki were going to be on their date. So Suzuha, she's like third wheeling it just to make sure Daru doesn't fuck up. The man was a giant who looked like he ate major curry all the time, but the woman was slim, pretty, and looked very kind. The combination of a huge man and a slim woman was as unbalanced as the combination of a pretty girl and major curry. The major curry was big. It was huge. Suzuha knew from experience. The massive silver trays were loaded with rice and curry and topped with 2 fried cutlets, fried shrimp, sausage, a boiled egg, and a mountain of cabbage. There was 2 or 3 times as much curry as you'd find in a normal dish, and the toppings were just as big. Even a growing young boy would find it hard to eat them all. Did Daru order for both of them? Suzuha was irritated. He must have. The Beauty and the Beast couple that Suzuha was watching, of course, was Itaru and Yuki. In the morning, they'd gone to see a movie in Yurakucho. Then they'd come to Akihabara and gone straight to Go-Go Curry. Watch Yuki's just packs it away. Suzuha had followed them the whole time. That's why she couldn't believe Itaru's choice of a date spot.
私はゴーゴーカレーでも全く問題ないけど、というかむしろ好きな方だけど、せっかくの初デートなんだから、もうちょっと他に選択肢もあるだろう。
She clutched her spoon tight and gritted her teeth. Suzuha knew next to nothing about Japanese youth culture in 2011, and even she knew it was a bad idea. Who knew what was going through Yuki's mind? Or so Suzuha thought. But...
うわあ、写真よりもすごいですね。
Surprisingly, Yuki was ignoring the people around her and innocently enjoying the huge curry.
あまねし、もし食べきれなかったら、僕が食べてあげるですから。
Is that the reason you ordered both of them so you could have the rest? I am imagining Yuki just eats the whole thing.
そうですか。びっくりです。
実はいつもお店の外でメニューだけ見てて、一度食べてみたかったんですよね。連れてきてもらえて嬉しいです。
それは実に良かったです。
お
Suzuha had evidently worried over nothing, but still she realized Itaru was acting strangely. Ever since he'd come out of the movie theater, he was walking and talking strangely. Instead of his usual hunched posture, he was forcing himself to stand up straight. His every movement seemed oddly forced, as if he were a broken robot. And he downed glass after glass of water.
あ、ごめんなさい。私にもお水のおかわりを。
はいはい、どうぞ。
ありがとうございます。
Itaru poured water into Yuki's cup. Suzuha had a bad feeling, and she was right. Itaru was moving so awkwardly he almost spilled water on her hand.
大丈夫ですか？
ええ、ちょっと手が濡れただけですから。それより早く食べましょう。
Yuki quickly wiped down the table with her handkerchief and grabbed her fork and spoon. There were stars in her eyes.
それじゃあ、いただきます。
いただきます。
Yuki seemed to be really enjoying her meal, but Itaru was very formal and quiet. He was taking little nibbles out of a piece of fried cutlet, like a squirrel eating a nut. Yuki's like, are you having trouble finishing that? I'll finish it for you. The whole time they weren't saying a word.
いっ 体何をやってるんだ父さんは。あんなんじゃ母さんに愛想つかされちゃうよ。
She decided to send him a message on Rhine telling him to get his act together, and she'd just taken out her phone when...
はい、メジャーカレールーマシー、お待たせしました。
A huge plate was laid on the table in front of her. The other customers started murmuring again. Come to think of it, when she'd followed them into the store, she'd ordered her usual major curry with extra roux and then forgotten about it. Now everybody was going to focus on her. In a small shop like this, it was suicide.
あら
Just as she expected, her eyes met Yuki's.
鈴葉さん、いたんですか？偶然だね、ユキさん、兄さん。声かけてくれればよかったのに。いや、気がつかなかったんだよ、全然。
She realized she should probably leave, but she couldn't go without at least taking a bite of the major curry in front of her. Her experiences in the war had left her completely unable to waste food. She felt Yuki and Itaru staring at her as she reluctantly picked up her spoon.
とまあ、そういうことなんで、二人ともごゆっくり。
Her only choice was to finish her extra-large curry as soon as possible. She couldn't let herself be in the way. But instead, Yuki came over and picked up Suzuha's plate.
すみません、店員さん。おとも。
はい、どうぞ。
OK ですって。一緒に食べましょうよ。
Oh man, she's third wheeling on the date that will determine whether she's even born if this goes badly.
ちょっと、なんでって、ほら、鈴葉さんもメジャーカレーじゃないですか。これはぜひ勝負せねばと思って。はあ？審判は橋田さんにやってもらいましょう。
Maybe this is, I know she says she gets it from like the war, but maybe Suzuha's like a really good eater and maybe she gets it from her mom. Before Suzuha could respond, Yuki had moved her plate over to their table. I'm telling you, Yuki's probably like a speed eater and probably has like an appetite. I've seen some people who are like speed eaters or who can eat a lot of food and they're like really skinny. Like there's a Japanese guy, I believe, who's like I think he's got, I don't know if he still has it, but he had or has like the world record for eating the most hot dogs, and he's skinny. She had no choice but to follow, but before she sat down, she whispered in Yuki's ear.
デート中なんだよね。え？あ、そうです。デート中です。改めて言われると照れますね。
Itaru didn't react at all, even though she was sure he'd overheard that.
私デートとかしたことないから詳しくないんだけどさ。デート中に他の女とカレーの早食い対決したりするもんなの？さあ、どうでしょう。でもほら、アニメとかコミックスとかにそういうのありません？お兄ちゃんを取られたくない妹が彼女さんに向かって勝負だ。
Is that what Yuki thinks is happening? Like she knows it's not a coincidence that Suzuha's there, but she sees it as a weird like she doesn't approve of, you know, Yuki going out on a date with her brother, so she's like, I'm gonna sabotage them, or like it's a fight for the brother's love, which is weird to say because he's also her dad. For some reason, Yuki seemed incredibly enthused. Suzuha was overwhelmed by her energy.
知らないってば。そういうものなの？兄さん。
But even when she turned to Itaru for help, he just awkwardly sat there eating his curry like a robot.
兄さん？
He awkwardly turned his head to face her. The rest of him stayed completely still.
なんか言った。
どうしたのさ？なんかおかしいよ。
どうもしてないお。おかしくないお。
お。
Suzuha glanced back at Yuki. And for the first time, Yuki looked concerned. And In the end, Yuki and Suzuha did have their curry eating contest, and surprisingly, both of them completely finished their meals. Why would you talk about this and then skip over that? I was hoping there'd be a CG of like them both eating and then Yuki just absolutely destroying Suzuha. Disappointed. Suzuha won by a very small margin, but the battle was exciting enough that not only the other customers, but the staff as well were applauding at the end. But the whole time, Itaru kept eating by himself. Since this wasn't even a conversation, let alone a date, she sent Itaru home alone. Part of her wanted to demand Itaru explain himself right now, but she decided to talk to Yuki instead. She tried her best to avoid Yuki so far in order to keep her identity a secret, but it was July now. She'd be gone from this era very soon. This might be her last chance to talk to Yuki at all. She's like, this date has been a fucking nightmare. That's the real reason I wanted you to come hang out with us. Yuki sighed a little after Itaru left.
私、もしかしたら気に障るようなことをしちゃったのかもしれません。橋田さん、私といてもあんまり楽しくないみたいだったから、単に緊張してただけじゃないかな。でも映画を見る前は楽しそうにお話ししてくれてたんですよ。それが映画の後はすっかりよそよそしくなってしまって、私何か間違っちゃったのかな。カレー屋さんに連れて行ってもらったのも私のリクエストだったんですけど、ずっとあの調子だったからさすがにちょっと困ってしまって、それで偶然お店にいた鈴葉さんに助けを求めたというわけです。
What had happened inside the theater? Suzuha hadn't followed them inside. She'd spent about 2 hours killing time outside.
あのさ、ゆきさんはなんで兄さんのこと好きになったの？いや、私が言うのもなんだけど、あんまりモテるタイプじゃないじゃん、兄さんって。鈴葉さんはお兄さんのことどう思います？私？好きですか？嫌いですか？好きですよね。見ていればわかります。まあ、
There were parts of him that she didn't like, but of course she loved her dad.
で、私のことは別にどうでもいいじゃないか。それで、ゆきさんは？私はまだ好きかどうかもよくわからないです。そっか。
Not only had Itaru not told Yuki he liked her, this was still their first date, and they hadn't spoken that much before either. She hadn't even reached the point where she saw him as a member of the opposite sex. For almost a year, Suzuha had stayed with him, and she, Mairi, and Ferris had done everything they could to get the two of them together, but there hadn't been any real progress. Suzuha felt uneasy when she thought about the future. Maybe her dad wouldn't be her dad anymore. Maybe her mom wouldn't be her mom anymore. Dad and mom wouldn't be together. She imagined that future.
そんなの嫌だ。
She looked straight into Yuki's eyes.
私さ、もうすぐここからいなくなるんだ。ちょっと遠いところに引っ越すんだよね。そうなんですか？多分戻ってこないと思う。心配なんだ、父さん。兄さんのことだからさ、ゆきさん、こんなこと私が頼むのもおかしな話なんだけど。
And then she bowed deeply.
橋田至をよろしくお願いします。
There was no answer from Yuki. Suzuha looked up, afraid, and tried to gauge the expression on her face. She looked kind of lonely, and kind of sad.
私は どうしたいんでしょうね。
Yuki whispered, and then Suzuha hugged her? Maybe?
ああ、もうどうするんだよ。これじゃ破局の危機だよ。まだ始まってもいないけど。
As soon as she got back to the lab, she yelled at her useless father.
うおー、すずはごめんな。箸だけはもうダメなんだお。
しょぼくれてるんじゃない。シャレじゃ済まないんだ。とりあえず今日はなんであんな態度を取ったのかしっかり説明して。今朝出かけるときはあんなに楽しそうだったじゃないか。母さんだって映画の途中までは普通だったって言ってたし。一体何があったの？
いや、それがさ、聞いてくれよ。映画の座席って狭いじゃん。だから僕、天音氏の邪魔にならないようにと思ってできるだけ椅子の端っこに寄って座ってたんだよね。そしたら椅子がベキっていって壊れそうになって、で慌てて体を支えようとして肘掛けを掴
Oh,
んだんだ
did he
けど、
grab Yuki instead?
それが肘掛けじ
So
ゃ
he
なくて
psyched himself
天
out,
音
and
氏
then he
の
got all weird after.
うん。そんなこと母さん一言も言ってなかったけど。
嘘じゃないよ。あの柔らかい感触は肘掛けのはずがない。女の子の手に決まってる。
そう。
ただ僕、女の子と手をつなぐなんて2次元ならともかく3次元じゃほとんど経験なくて。
それでどうしたの？
天音氏優しいからさ、僕を傷つけないようにと思ったのか、その手を振りほどかないんだお。僕ってこの体型じゃん。手汗とかかきまくりじゃん。ベッタベッタになるわけじゃん。なのに天音氏、何にも言わずそのままで。なんかそれからすごく意識するようになっちゃって。
So he was just like really self-conscious, and that's why he was acting so strange.
ああ、なるほどね。それであんなにポンコツになってたのか。
Well, also, if your hands are sweaty, maybe don't wear those gloves. I was like, geez, they look like they're leather in July. Even with the air conditioning in a theater, your hands would get sweaty.
天音氏もきっと心の中でキモいうざい話せ変態って思ってたに違いないよ。
母さんはそんな人間じゃないよ。
In fact, from the way she was acting, she probably thought she'd upset him somehow. The problem was what she'd said.
私はどうしたいんでしょうね。
What did she mean by that?
母さんがわからない。
すずは、こうなったら母さんのことは諦めて僕と二人で仲良く生きていこう。
言ってることがめちゃくちゃだよ。そもそも私はどうやって生まれてくればいいんだ。
でも無理だって。
父さんが頑張らないでどうするの？このピンチをチャンスに変えるんだよ。
She grabbed her father by the collar and shook him.
出ないと。
She remembered how sad Yuki had looked when they'd said goodbye.
出ないと取り返しがつかないことになるよ。
ですよね。
Suzuha was starting to wonder about leaving, especially now that she had even more to worry about. Maybe I shouldn't have talked to Yuki after all. She realized again how powerless she was, being from the future. The Global Brain Science Comprehensive Research Organization Japanese office prep room in Wako City hadn't changed a bit in 6 months. It was still far from being what it needed to be, and still almost completely empty. There were rows and rows of empty desks. The amount of dust on the tables had perhaps increased. After Dr. Leskinen had left, it probably remained unused.
わざわざ呼びつけてすまないね、リンタロウ。
ああ、いえ。
Dr. Leskinen had told me he wanted to update the Amadeus app to the latest version, so I'd come to his office after class. Maho had connected my phone to her PC to begin the process. He said it would only take 10 minutes, so I was sitting around and waiting.
ところで、リンタロウ。以前にも話したと思うが、本気で留学について考えてみないかい？
え？
君が問題なければ、推薦状も書こうじゃないか。もちろんテストや面接はパスする必要があるけどね。
I frantically straightened my posture.
とてもありがたい話なんですが、今の俺の学力じゃまだ難しいかと。俺、真剣にビクトル・コンドリア大を目指しているんです。だからこそ絶対に失敗したくなくて、そのためにはせめてあと1年本気で勉強すべきだって思っていて。
Dr. Leskinen pursed his lips as I tried to stammer out an explanation. But soon...
OK。
He patted me on the shoulder and smiled.
やはり君はとても思慮深い青年だね。
そうですか？そんな風に言われたのは初めてですが。
Saying it was one thing, but maybe I was just a coward. There were times when you needed the courage to move forward without being afraid of failure. Was now one of those times?
では、挑戦は来年かな？
そうですね。
Had I missed my chance? Would Dr. Leskinen wait until next year? I started to get nervous.
根を詰めすぎるのも良くないよ。例えば、大学を見学に行くだけでも、モチベーションのアップにつながると思う。
Of course he wants to get me away from here. He wants to get me to the States. I wonder if there'll be the flashback to, like, when he was taken to America and he's like, don't do it, don't do it.
見学ですか？
もしタイミングが合えば、旅費は出すから、ぜひ一度一緒に行ってみないかい？
そこまでしてもらえるなんて。ありがとうございます。
もちろん私は次いつアメリカに帰れるかどうかわからないから時期については明言できないがね。
はい。
I bowed my head in gratitude. Meeting Dr. Leskinen was a real lucky break for me. Maho, she knows. She knows. That's not the right thing to do, but she can't say it in front of him. By chance, my eyes met Maho. She like shakes her head like, no, don't do it. For some reason, her smile was a little sad. She quickly looked away and went back to her work. Maho was staying in a business hotel a few stops down from Wako City. She said she deliberately avoided staying in the same hotel as last time.
少し不便になったけれどね。
というか、少しは片付けたらどうだ？
She hadn't spent that much time in Japan and it was already messy.
片付ける？私は自分が一番効率的に過ごすことのできる配置をしているだけよ。
There's some people who are like that, where it's just like a chaotic, like it's a mess, but it's an organized mess. Like they know where everything is. But to the outside perspective, it just looks like a disaster. Which meant she was refusing the hotel's cleaning service.
そんな風にデリカシーが欠けてるから先輩にはいつまで経っても彼氏ができないんですよ。
I could hear Kurisu from my phone. She was annoyed. After the app updated, I left Amadeus running.
大きなお世話よ。
この部屋の惨状で人を招くなんて普通は恥ずかしくてとてもできません。
Well, cleaning wasn't a specialty of mine either. It wouldn't be right to give her too much of a hard time.
それで、俺に話って。
Oh, is she gonna be like, don't do it. Don't trust him. I'd come to Maho's hotel because she said she wanted to talk to me about something. I wouldn't have minded talking about it in the office, but she insisted on speaking alone in her hotel room. I knew she didn't mean anything by it. After knowing her for half a year, I knew she wasn't the type. Maho looked like she was having trouble finding the words she wanted to say.
あなたにまだ聞けていないから、クリスの事件の真相を。
I quickly shut down the Amadeus app.
それにタイムマシンのことについても聞きたいの。
タイムマシン？
クリスは中鉢論文に関わっている。そう言ったのはあなたよ。ねえ、あの子は本当にタイムマシンを？
あ。
How should I answer that? Last time, she'd been trying to decrypt Kirisu's laptop. I was willing to tell her what I'd experienced in order to get her to stop. In the end, I'd lost the chance, though. But things were different now. Kirisu's laptop was gone. There was no reason to bring it up anymore. But then Maho said something I didn't expect.
実は私、この半年、本来の研究と並行でタイムマシンの研究をしていたの。
なんだって？
クリスにできたのなら私もって思ってしまって。歪んだ対抗意識ね。意地になっているのかも。でもね、もしタイムマシンを作ることができたらクリスのことを救えるかもって。
That's a true friend right there. She's making a time machine just to be able to save her friend. This was awful. Why bring it up now? Maho was still haunted by Kirisu's death just as much as I was.
バカなことは考えるな。
岡部さん。
マキセクリスを救おうなんて考えるんじゃない。そんな可能性はゼロなんだ。神の設営がそれを許さない。
やっぱりあなた、やっぱり何か知っているのね。
Maho got closer to me.
もしかして実現させたの？クリスはタイムマシンを完成させている？あなたはそれに乗ってすでに人類初のタイムトラベルを行ったんでしょ？そうなんだわ。
根拠があって言っているのか？
I pretended to remain calm. Maho seemed shocked at her own words.
ごめんなさい。私どうかしているわ。こんな妄想を口にするなんて。
ヒアジョさん。
Maho started to cry. I didn't know what to do when she started crying right in front of me.
どうしたのかしら。私こんな急に全然泣くつもりなんて。
She used her fingers to wipe away the tears. She seemed pretty unstable. I could sense a lot more fragility than I'd seen before. She looked like she'd been psychologically pushed to the limit. All the things she'd experienced must have taken a toll on her. When we were talking on video chat, I hadn't seen any signs of that at all. Should I tell her? If she was researching a time machine, that was a bad sign. She might start looking into things and open doors that should remain closed. If that was the case, I should tell her what I experienced, and then have her give up just like I did. Yeah, she's already this psychologically fragile, even at just researching the time machine and some of the other stuff that she experienced. Like, actually doing time leaping? I don't think she's got it in her.
絶対に誰にも
Yeah, looks like
他言無
Maho's
用
gonna
だ。
know this, but then so will her AI.
それともう一度これだけは言っておく。マキセ・クリスを救おうとは考えるな。いいな。
She nodded as she wiped away the tears. I told her, About the events in the Alpha Worldline, about the time machine, about reading Steiner, about the method of sending memories back through time that I called a time leap, about how Kirisu had developed a time leap machine that made this possible, about Suzuha Amane, the time traveler from the year 2036, about the future Suzuha had told us about in the Third World War, and about how the race to develop a time machine would set off that war. I told her all these things as matter-of-factly as I could. As for how Kurisu died, I couldn't tell her that. When I told her everything, she fell silent for a bit. She took a deep breath, frowned, and rubbed her temples.
頭が痛いわ。
Okabe's like, yeah, try living it.
全て信じる必要はない。俺の頭がおかしいと思っても構わない。だが、もし君がタイムマシンの研究を続けてマキセ・クリスを救おうとするなら、俺はどんな手段を使っても止めるつもりだ。だから変な考えは捨てるんだ。自分を追い詰めるのはよせ。
I was about to say more, but Maho put her hand up to stop me.
もう少し整理させて。あなたの言うリーディングシュタイナーって新型脳炎のことじゃないの？レスキネン教授が話していた症状と同じだわ。
そうだな。
Yeah, it's also like, let's get into this.
そう
Why
か
do
もしれ
certain
ない。
people seem to have this ability?
レスキネン教授には
Makes
話す
sense
べき
for
かどうか
Okabe because he's experienced the
まだ迷
time
っている
machine
んだ。
before. But then again, did he have that before he encountered the time machine, or is he just special like that?
無用な混乱を招くかもしれないし。君はどう思う？
私に聞かないで。
Maho still massaging her temples with her fingers.
そうだな。すまない。
あなたはクリスのノート PC を本当に破壊してしまったの？
ああ、壊した。
中身は見た？
ロックの解除方法がわからなかったんだ。見ようがない。
Even Daru said he couldn't do it. There was no way I could do it on my own.
あなたはクリスが書いたタイムマシンに関するオリジナルの論文を読んだの？
いや。
Maho kept asking me questions. She seemed to be in some kind of strange hurry.
あなたはクリスがどうやってタイムリープマシンを完成させたか知っているの？
おおよそはな。
再現できる？
どうだろうか。ダルの助けがあれば、あるいは。
できるのね。
He's like, did you not hear all the stuff I just said about like forgetting about this?
俺一人じゃ難しい。
私なら。
そんなことは考えるな。
Maho suddenly grimaced as if she was in pain. I realized how pale she was.
ヒアジョさん、大丈夫か？
Did she really have a headache or something?
少し横になるか？
But she shook her head and kept asking questions.
タイムマシンは今どこにあるの？鈴葉さんが乗ってきたという。それはどこに？どこなの？
I wasn't sure if I should say without Suzuha's permission.
秋葉原だ。
Maho looked so desperate that I found myself answering her question.
ラジカンの屋上に今もある。
そう。
Her shoulders slumped and her head drooped. I was worried she might ask to see it for herself, but maybe she really was sick.
本当に平気か？
I put my hand on her shoulder and looked at her face.
今日はもう休んだ方が。
Oh. There was no warning at all. Maho's tiny body slammed into me. The force was enough to push me back to the wall.
何を？
Before I knew what was happening, her arm was against my throat. Oh my gosh, she was using the bone in her arm to put pressure on my windpipe. I I couldn't breathe or speak. I twisted my body and tried to resist, still clueless as to what was going on. Then she used her other hand to grab my head and slam it back into the wall. Maho, what? What? Are you like a sleeper agent? What's going on here? Her strength was incredible. I was a lot bigger than she was, but I still couldn't escape her grasp.
残念だわ、岡部さん。
Her voice was very dark and very cold. And suddenly, she moaned again and her face twisted in pain. Oh no, is she being affected by that thing where it's like she is almost like a sleeper agent, like that dude with the gun? It's like she can't even control herself.
頭が割れそうよ。
Yes, I think it is. It's like she's being controlled. She was crying again.
なんで私に話してくれたのよ。あなたは黙っている。
Or is it what she's literally just got overwhelmed by all the information? I thought for a second it's like she got possessed. I couldn't escape. I grabbed onto her long hair and tried to pull her away, but she didn't move at all. It was as if she felt no pain. My phone had been vibrating in my pocket for a while now. I desperately grabbed for it. I pressed the button without even looking at the screen. Please answer, Kurisu.
Okabe?
Kurisu.
I was blacking out. Was I going to die here? Without even knowing why Maho was trying to kill me? Is this actually how this is gonna end? But the whole time she was strangling me, Maho looked like she was in so much pain. And wait, was she still crying? This is kind of like, what's her face? Like Kagami, where it was the same thing, like she was doing all this stuff trying to kill Suzuha, but also, you know, not wanting to. Before I could figure out if her tears were real or an act, I passed out. Well, this got interesting. I mean, it has been interesting, but what the hell? When I woke up, my throat hurt. I tried to cover my mouth with my hands, but something was keeping them from moving. She tied me up! Oh my goodness! Oh no! I opened my eyes and saw I was sitting in some kind of chair with my head facing downwards. I'm at the lab, damn it. Dr. Leskinen is probably going to make his appearance and be like, he's going to drop the act. I slowly raised my head. My hands were tied to the armrest with zip ties. When I tried to break out, the ties dug into my skin and hurt very badly. Oh, was that a whole thing? Like, was Maho somehow, like, manipulated by maybe Dr. Leskinen or, like, the military or something? Like, something happened to her where, like, once she found out that information, she had to, like, take him out. Very strange. I tried looking around. It was a room I'd never seen before. There were machines that looked like they belonged in the operating room of a hospital. But the wall was also lined with monitors, like some kind of guard room or control room. I couldn't see any windows, so I had no idea where I was. My throat hurt when I tried to talk, and then I remembered Maho had almost killed me. Why had she done that? I felt more confused than angry. And there he is.
Rintaro, mega sameta kai?
Yeah, there's no happy inflection. I heard footsteps and saw a wavering shadow beneath the dim fluorescent lights in front of me. I knew that voice.
Leskinen.
気分はどうかな。喉が渇いたなら水を用意させるよ。
When I looked again, I saw he wasn't alone. There were several men behind him in black suits. They were looking at me without saying a word. The MIB. All of them were holding guns. They looked like MIBs and reminded me of the foreigners I'd almost ran into at Daro's shop 6 months ago. Or was it the same group?
これは一体
There were a lot of things I wanted to ask, but more than anything, I wanted to know why Dr. Leskinen wasn't helping me. So I'm guessing he probably knew about what Maho was told about the time machine and Kirisu from her AI, because he forced her basically to update her AI. And then, I don't know if like she got brainwashed, or if like whatever happened where it's just like she found out that information. Maybe she was kind of like forced, because they said like she had a sad smile, like she knew what she was about to do. that she had to get that information from him. And then once she got the information, then she knocked him out. And she even said, like, I wish you hadn't told me that. It's like she was kind of doing it against her will. And she was saying, too, like, her head hurt. Like, once she found that information, she got, like, her head hurt. Of course, the first thing that came to my mind was the obvious answer. It was Dr. Leskinen who'd put me here, and Maho had captured me under his orders. But I didn't want to think about that.
ここはどこですか?
So all I could ask was a stupid question like that.
私の目に狂いはなかったよ。君はまさに情報の宝庫だ。今や合衆国大統領にも匹敵する価値のある人物と言ってもいい。
He didn't answer me, but showed me a self-satisfied smile. I could feel alarm bells going off in my head. I was getting more suspicious of Dr. Leskinen.
俺は監禁されてるんですか?
監禁というよりは保護と言った方がいいだろうね。君の価値が明らかになれば、狙ってくる連中はたくさん出てくるはずだからね。
レスキネン教授が指示したんですか?
そうだよ。私がこうすべきだと判断した。魔法から君の持つ情報について聞いてね。
ヒヤジョウさんはどこです?
ホテルで休んでるんじゃないかな。
ヒヤジョウさんは俺から情報を引き出すために近づいてきたんですか?
最初はそうではなかったよ。結果的にはそうなったけれどね。
あなたも俺に親切にしてくれたのもそういう打算があったからですか? あなたは一体何者なんです?
まあまあ落ち着けなさい。前に教えただろう。科学者たるもの、常に冷静でなければいけない。興奮していいのは実験が成功した時だけだと。
But it's still so crazy that, like, it just happened to be the fact that Maho just happened to talk to him before the lecture, and then, you know, he stood up, like, Okabe stood up and caught their attention, and then Maho just happened to talk to him about Kurisu. Like, all of that just seems so... I don't know if this was set in stone, if this was like this timeline, this is what was going to happen, but it just seemed like it was kind of like circumstantial, and it just happened to fall into Dr. Leskinen's lap. It almost seems a little too perfect. Instead of feeling calm, Dr. Leskinen's attitude was pissing me off. I felt betrayed. There was rage, frustration, sorrow, and a lot of other feelings all mixed together as I gritted my teeth. Dr. Leskinen ignored me and gave a brief order in English to the other men. They left the room. Only Dr. Leskinen and I remained.
さて、リンタロウ。私のもう一つの仕事の話をしよ
う。もう一つの仕事?
It was then I remembered the other worldline I'd been sent to. It's military, right? Military purposes. Shimayama told me an American organization had demanded I be turned over.
CIA か? NSC か?
But Dr. Leskinen only chuckled.
一緒にされては心外だな。彼らは無能な公務員の集まりだよ。君はストラテジック・フォーカス社というアメリカの民間情報機関を知っているかな?
ストラテジック・フォーカス社?
I'd heard of them before on a conspiracy theory site the old me used to read all the time.
ストラト4!
So what we're learning is everything on message boards that are conspiracy theories are actually true. Time travel, like John Titor, this. So believe everything, apparently. Strat 4, fictional, official name, strategic focus, an American civilian intelligence company sometimes called the Shadow CIA. It has its own independent intelligence network that it uses to gather and analyze security information from around the globe. And many famous companies and military organizations sit on its board of advisors. They are a for-profit company with completely different ideals and policies from groups like Anonymous, who crack classified information, or WikiLeaks, which publishes public interest information from whistleblowers. There is a real information brokerage company named Strategic Forecasting Inc., based out of Texas. This company bears no relationship whatsoever with Strategic Focus, so please don't sue us. I remembered reading that they'd acquired top-secret information on Russian ballistic missiles that even the CIA couldn't get, and then sold it. The result was the destruction of the CIA's reputation, and at the same time, the total reorganization of Russia's military strategy. I'd even heard rumors that during the Gulf and Iraq wars, they'd obtained information about the warring countries faster than anyone and spread it as needed. The world's government supposedly called them the Shadow CIA.
あなたがそのストラト4だって。でも脳科学研究所の主任研究員じゃ。
本業はそっちだよ。もちろんね。ところで私はよくこういう説を唱える連中に出くわすんだ。人間は殺し合いをする猿である。人間の脳だけが大脳新皮質の発達によって狂った信仰や野望を持つようになり、そのせいで戦争が起きる。だが私はそうした説を聞くたびに思うのさ。そんなバカみたいな考え方は受け入れられない。でたらめだとね。ではなぜ人間同士の不毛な戦争がいつまでも終わらないのか。わかるかな、レンタロウ。それはね、情報のせいなんだよ。人間は誰しもあるコミュニティに属している軍隊だ。個人個人は自主的に行動しているつもりでいても、実は全ての脳はそのコミュニティに流布されている情報によってつながっている。そして一つの群れとして生きることを余儀なくされているのさ。例を挙げてみよう。そうだな。例えは悪いが、ヨーロッパのある国が行った人類史上最悪の大虐殺は何も中世の魔女狩りの時代に起こった出来事じゃない。20世紀も半ば、すでに原子爆弾すら作られていた、そんな時代の話なんだよ。しかもその国は当時最先端の文明国家の一つだった。その国の指導者の資質問題は歴史学者に委ねるとして、実際の現場で虐殺に手を染めた人々のことを君は知っているかい？彼らはただの人殺しの猿だったのだろうか？違う。彼らはごくありふれた普通の人たちだった。脳科学的に見ても何一つ異常の見られない普通の脳だったはずだ。ところがひとたびそこにとある最悪の情報が伝播すると、途端に彼らの脳は平気で虐殺を行う軍隊と化してしまう。
最悪の情報？
これは我々の使命なのだ。我々は正しいのだ。だから使命に従わない者は悪なのだ。そういう情報さ。
何が言いたいんですか？
人間の脳という脆い軍隊のための情報はきちんと制御できる者が管理しなくてはならないということだよ。それがストラテジックフォーカスの最終目的だ。私はそれに共感して脳科学者でありながらエージェントとして協力している。
Just the term strategic focus, it just sounds like it's some sort of basic corporate thing, like, oh, we have to brainstorm ideas and come up with plans. Like, it doesn't seem like a shadow CIA, like strategic focus. I mean, maybe it's the fact that they're trying to make it not seem super impressive, but I don't know, it just sounds like a basic corporate fluff thing.
分かってくれたかな？
わかりません。そんなのよくある映画の悪役のへりくつだ。結局あなたは金で情報を売買してるだけじゃないですか。俺が情報の宝庫だって言いましたよね。タイムマシンの情報を一体どの国に売るつもりです？アメリカ、中国、それとも中東やアフリカの紛争地域ですか？
そのすべてだよ。
I guess it's to give him all the information to see who can make one first, although, I mean, Russia apparently is already making one, and he must be aware of that. Leskinen shrugged his shoulders and quietly laughed.
核兵器と同じさ。抑止力としてあらゆる国に必要だと思っている。
タイムマシンは核兵器なんかとはわけが違う。それが使われたかどうか誰も気づかない。もしかしたら使った本人さえも気づかないうちに世界は改変されてしまうんだ。抑止力になんかならない。どの国も誰がどう世界線をいじったのかすら感知できないまま狂ったように改変を続けるでしょう。永遠に。
その通り。タイムマシンは核兵器以上にデリケートだ。だからこそ君たちの能力が必要となる。君は確かリーディングスタイナーと名付けたそうだね。どうやら新型脳炎とほぼ同じ症例だとか。
That's right. Leskinen was researching the new encephalitis too.
我々は新型脳炎患者が過去改変を感知できるのかもしれないというところまでは突き止めていてね。ずっとその確証を求めていたんだ。世界中の諜報機関も同じ。躍起になって調べている。
I hated myself for not realizing the possibilities sooner. I'd always had the wrong idea. I thought the reason the new encephalitis patients were being brought together was just to give them meaningless treatment. But I was naive, too naive. Leskinen and Stratford's goal was to gather people with reading Steiner and study them.
さっきマホから君の特筆すべき能力のことを詳細に聞かせてもらったよ。本来君からはクリスの失われた成果について聞き出せればそれでいいと思っていたが、新型脳炎の情報まで出てくるとは。君は最高だよ。ここでも我々は世界に対して一歩先んじることができる。というか、君はどうしてもっと早く私にその能力のことを話してくれなかったんだい。そうすれば君の友人勝美の脳もあそこまでいろいろといじくらないで済んだのに。
Katsumi Makise. Did he mean Fubuki?
それに君が話してくれていたなら魔法の脳に施術をすることもなかったんだ。
比叡城さんまで。
Was that why she was acting so weird?
あなたの助手だろ。あなたを尊敬し慕っていたのに、そんな人体実験みたいな真似を。よくも。
He's probably gonna give something about like scientists must be calm, not let
今
emotion
後人
control.
類に貢献する情報を手に入れるために必要なことだったんだ。それにそんなに慌てなくても大丈夫。魔法も勝美も将来少し脳機能に障害が残る程度で済むはずだ。
あんた 狂ってる。
For the first time, I felt hatred for and fear of the man in front of me. I couldn't believe that this was the same man I'd respected so much.
リーディングスタイナー保有者の脳を調べればもっといろいろな発見があるだろう。それをタイムマシンとセットで売れば世界の軍事バランスは完全に保たれる。戦争も回避できるんだ。君にもぜ
There he
ひ
goes, talking
協
about
力
the
してほ
greater
しい。
good. We're doing this for the greater good of humanity. Leskinen's mannerisms hadn't changed a bit, even as he spoke of these horrifying things. He spoke of these insane things in the same manner that Maho once described as like a mischievous child's. That's kind of going back to what he talked about, like, he studied the brain of soldiers participating in war. If you give them certain information, they're capable of doing things because they see it as that they're correct in doing that. I guess you could apply it to him as well. He's seeing as he's doing the right thing for humanity, so what's a little bit of collateral damage along the way?
俺のことを騙してたんですね。俺に近づいたのはただ俺がクリスと親しかったからだ。クリスの生前の情報を俺から引き出そうとしていた。
騙していたつもりはないよ。君と最初に会ったのは
Yeah,
偶然だ。
exactly. Coincidence, right? That's what I was thinking. I was like, this would have to be freaking 4D chess to have everything go the way it did. It was just a coincidence.
エムデウスのテストを頼んだのは君がクリスの友人だからというのが大きかったがね。ただ君のことを知るうちに純粋に興味を持ったのは本当だ。今でも思っているよ。私の下で研究員になってくれたら嬉しいとね。
Because, you treat your assistants so well.
だがそれとこれとは別の話なんだ。さっき言っただろう。君は今この時点で合衆国大統領に匹敵するレベルの重要人物だと。私個人の考えよりも我々の仕事を優先せざるを得ないんだ。未来の人類の平和のために。残念だ、リンタロウ。そして楽しみでもある。君の持つ情報の全貌を私は早く知りたくてうずうずしているよ。
地獄に落ちろ。
これから君の記憶データを取らせてもらう。君の記憶をアメデウスシステムとして使わせてもらうんだ。面白いアイデアだろ。そうすれば君が不良の事故で死んでも君の記憶は残る。
Now this will be interesting if we do a time leap back, or if, like how much of this will be the same and how much will be different.
あは、心配しなくてもいい。元より殺すつもりなどないよ。人間というのはエムデウスよりもセキュリティが甘いんだ。苦痛を味わうとそれから逃れるために簡単に
Okay,
情
so
報
what,
を
we're just
漏
gonna
ら
get
す。
tortured?
秘密保持のセキュリティなど
But
ないに
or
等しい。
he's transferring the, except he says he doesn't want to kill me, but if he transfers the memories over to Amadeus, it's like they've got a lock on it and they've got it. It would almost make sense to kill off, like after they get Amadeus, they get his memories, they could kill him off and then they have it and they don't have to risk anyone else capturing Okabe and torturing him for information.
拷問が通用しないエムデウスより生身の君の相手をする方がずっと楽だ。記憶データを取るのはバックアップだと思ってくれたまえ。例えば君が拷問に耐えきれず精神崩壊を起こしてしまったとしても近い将来記憶データを君の脳にダウンロードして回復させることもできるからね。君も私の講演に参加していたから知っているだろう。まず記憶データの取得。 その後で君自身からいろいろなことを教えてもらう予定だ。
Now, this would be nice if
忙し
Suzuha
く
could
なる
jump
ぞ。
back in time right about now and undo all this.
さあ、リラックスして。そうでないとデータを正常に取得できないからね。
レスキネあんたは
そんな顔をしても誰も助けには来ない。ここは我々ストラット4が管理する場所だからね。我々以外には誰も知らない。誰もだ。
I was too stunned to think. There was nowhere to run. My knees shook in terror as I imagined what was about to happen to me. Maybe it would have been better to die. And then I felt sick as I remembered I was fated not to die until 2025. If no amount of torture could kill me, this was literally hell. So he's gonna die next year then in this time in the real world. In this game, it's crazy that that seems so far away, but it's really not. Her head hurt. Maho knelt down, closed her eyes, and bit her lips to shut out the pain. There was an annoying noise in her head that wouldn't go away. It made the headache worse. No matter how much she covered her ears, she couldn't block it out. She wanted to scream from the pain, but she held it in because she thought it'd only make her headache worse. She could hear a voice mixed in with the noise. It was Dr. Leskinen.
いいかい、マホ。君はどんな手段を使ってでも、リンタロウ・オカベが抱えている秘密
Yeah, so she
を
was
暴
just
く
like
ん
an
だ。
agent, like a zombie or like a puppet.
でないと、彼を殺さなくてはいけなくなる。そんなのは嫌だろ？君もリンタロウのことを随分と気にかけていたじゃないか。散々私やクリスが煽ったからね。君にその気などなくてもついつい意識してしまうものさ。それが人の心理だ。彼を助ける意味でも彼の持つ情報を引き出してほしい。そうしたら私はリンタロウを我が研究室に無条件で迎え入れてあげてもいい。マホ、彼について知り得たことは全て私に報告しなさい。彼の未来は君の手にかかっていると言ってもいい。
The voice and the noise were extremely unpleasant. She couldn't really understand what the voice was saying. She could hear him speaking, but her brain refused to understand the meaning of the words. But it didn't matter either way. Maho had done something terrible to Okabe Rintaro. She'd sold him out to Dr. Leskinen and Stratfor, and the fact that she knew it just made her guilt worse. She wanted to disappear from the world altogether.
Maho-san?
She was on a busy street in Akihabara in early summer. She was leaning on the side of a building in the shade when she heard someone call her name. Like, Tokyo has, like, literally millions of people, and yet the same 6 people just seem to keep running into each other out in the wild.
やっぱり真帆さんだ。まゆりさん。
She didn't expect to see Mayuri here, so she didn't know how to respond. She just looked back and stared.
具合悪いんですか？大丈夫よ。オカリンを見ませんでしたか？え。
Maho went completely still. Mayuri's innocent question reminded her of her own stupidity and cowardice.
どうして？
Her voice was shaking.
オカリン、昨日から連絡つかなくて。お家にも帰ってないし、電話も出ないし、メールや LINE にも返事来ないんです。ダル君は心配しすぎだって言うんだけど、なんだか胸騒ぎがするのです。 だから今日は学校を早退してこの辺りをずっと探してました。
It was still only July, but it was pretty hot. She'd been wandering around all of Akihabara in this heat. Mayuri Shino was a kind, pure-hearted girl. That was the impression that Maho had. She would never betray someone or get jealous or let someone use her.
知りたい？
Mayuri leaned forward.
真帆さん、オカリンのこと何か知ってるんですか？もし知ってるなら教えてください。お願いします。
She bowed deeply.
そうか。
And then she realized, and then she wished she hadn't. Mayuri was in love with Rintaro Okabe. A dull pain ran down her temples.
君もウィンターロのことを随分と気にかけ
Man,
て
he
いたじゃ
is,
ないか。
he's popular with the ladies, even if, so what, Maho's a little bit jealous? She could hear the noise in her head. It was almost like Kurisu and Dr. Leskinen. It's like they planted that idea in her head and kept repeating it until it almost like it became the truth. Just tell Mayuri everything, and then have this innocent girl tell you how horrible you are. Maybe you'll feel better then. The idea raced through Maho's mind. Even as she knew it was wrong, she tried to hold back her headache as she opened her mouth.
ゆうべ深夜岡部さんと一緒だったの。
Oh, is she gonna be like, we were together?
そうなんですか。
Except Mayuri's so innocent, she doesn't even understand like what
オ
that
カリ
could
ンは今どこに？
Maho ignored her question.
岡部さんは昨日私にこんな話をしてくれたわ。
No.
彼が経験してきた別の世界において椎名真由里さん、あなたは何度も死んだんですって。
Don't tell her.
何度やっても助けられずあなたは死に続けた。
You can't tell her this.
その悪夢のようなループから抜け出すためにあなたを救うために。
It was like another person was speaking using Maho's mouth.
岡部さんはクリスのことを犠牲にしたんだって。見殺しにしたんだっ
Oh,
て。
does Maho feel like some sort of resentment towards Mayuri that's, you know, like he had to sacrifice Kirisu because he could only save one of them?
そんな話をしてくれた。タイムマシンを作りクリスをもう一度救おうとすればまたあの頃に逆戻りしてしまう。
You're hurting her, but the words don't stop.
岡部さんはそのことをひどく恐れている。あなたを必死で守ろうとしている。ここはあなたを守るために他の多くのものを犠牲にして選択された世界なのよ。あなたは何も知らされていないだろうけど。嘘。そんな。オカリン。
Mayuri was too shocked to speak. She looked like she was about to cry at any instant. Suddenly, Mayuri turned around and started to walk away with slumped shoulders. Even from behind, Maho could tell she was having trouble walking straight. The truth was so cruel that confronting it threatened her very identity. That's how it seemed to Maho. Maho was still in a trance. It felt like there was a fog covering everything she saw. It was all out of focus like a mirage. If someone told her it was a dream, she'd easily believe it. The same was true of her own mind. She knew she should feel worse about what she just told Mairi, but while she realized she hurt her, she felt no emotion. That was probably why she was able to say something so awful. And then the phone in her pockets began to vibrate. She looked and saw it was from Amadeus, from Kirisu. Oh, shit. Ah, Kurisu didn't know any of that, did she? She said, oh, shit. She felt a small, thin needle prick her paralyzed heart. She couldn't answer it. How could she? She stared at the LCD screen, unable to move her fingers even a centimeter. She couldn't let Kirisu see her like this, but even so, it felt wrong to just stay here. Maho decided to go after Mairi. Well, maybe Kirisu because she doesn't have... Like, would Kirisu have heard any of that because she wasn't activated? Or is it just coincidence that Kirisu just happens to be calling? By the time she made it to the overpass, Mairi was already gone. Since she was right in front of the station, there were many people around and it would have been impossible to find her. I hope Mairi's not going to do something dangerous to herself.
なぜ私の前に現れたの。私に声なんてかけなければ傷つかずに
I don't
済ん
think
だの
Mairi
に。
would do something like, you know, hurting herself or, you know, worse, because that would mean that Okabe chose this worldline to protect her and then she just does something to, you know, undo that.
私はもう以前の私ではなくなってしまったのよ。
She looked down over the station from the overpass and whispered to herself, and then she saw someone in a distinctive outfit approaching her. Oh, they were wearing a black motorcycle suit and a black full-faced helmet despite the heat. She thought it might have been a cosplayer, but instead of trying to take pictures, the people nearby were avoiding them. Given a closer look, the person appeared to be a woman. Even Maho could tell she had incredible proportions. Oh my gosh, it's just like with Daru, like they gotta talk about how fat he is all the time. They would be like, she's really, really good looking though. The woman walked under the overpass and vanished from Maho's view. And then she came up the stairs. And she came right towards Maho. Maho quickly looked away like the other pedestrians and tried to run away. But before she could, the woman in the motorcycle suit ran over and wordlessly grabbed her hand. There was pain in her cheek. She was caught off guard and staggered to the ground. At first, she didn't know what had happened. She rubbed her aching cheek, and only then did she realize the woman in the motorcycle suit had slapped her. Oh shit, that's right. I keep forgetting that that's Kagari. I was like, she heard that. She could hear a muffled female voice from within the helmet. Oh, okay. Her voice was very calm, which only terrified Maho more. Is she gonna, like, throw her over the overpass? Because she was wearing a helmet, Maho couldn't read her facial expression. Since the visor was lowered, she couldn't even see her eyes. There was no answer to her question. Instead, the woman looked up to the sky as if she'd noticed something. Maho looked up too. For a moment, it seemed as if a black shadow crossed the windows of the building. She could hear a helicopter. It was close. How long had it been there? She hadn't noticed it at all. And then she felt the air around her change. The pedestrians were all looking toward the station in fear and shock. She could hear people saying things like, "What's that? Are they filming a TV show? Some kind of cosplay event?" Something was going on at the station. Maho stood up and looked too.
何あれ
She found herself whispering the same thing as the others. There were 2 trucks painted a deep military green parked outside the station. Men were coming out of them dressed in camo and carrying weapons. At first, she thought it might be the self-defense force, but the men weren't Japanese. It was hard to believe that what she was seeing was taking place in Japan. The men in camo disappeared into the alleyways as everyone watched from a safe distance. They were heading toward the radio building. Maho had heard from Rintaro yesterday the time machine was there.
まさかストラト4
Or Russia? Or perhaps another country's military? Were they here because Maho had told Leskinen what she had learned from Rintaro? As soon as the thought crossed her mind, she was hit with another terrible headache. It was all her fault. Everything was her fault. Until a moment ago, everything had seemed so hazy, but now she felt crushed by overwhelming guilt. If Okabe was right, and the Third World War was going to begin here in Akihabara, it would be because she gave the information he shared with her to Stratfor. She suddenly realized the girl who threatened to kill her had run down the stairs toward the station. Maho never did figure out who she was. And then her phone started to vibrate again. It was from Kurisu. She wanted to get away from the guilt. So this time she picked up the phone.
先輩
クリス
大丈夫ですか
何が
一体どうしちゃったんですか
どうもしないわ
だって泣いてるじゃないですか
Only then did she realize her eyes were overflowing with tears. The fog over her mind was now totally gone, and all that was left was the guilt, the regret, and the headaches.
頭が痛いの
彼の未来は君の手にかかっていると言ってもいい。
She heard the noise again.
岡部は岡部をどうしたんです？
岡部さんのことなんてどうでもいいでしょ。
殺そうとしてたじゃないですか。私見たんですよ。
私のことは放っておいて。
そういうわけにはいきません。
放っておいてよ。あなたには勝てなかった。私はどれだけやってもクリスにかなわない。ねえクリス、私はあなたのことを尊敬している。私より年下だけど大した科学者だと思うわ。でも心の底ではこう思ってたのよ。どうして私の前に現れたの？どうしてあと10年先に現れてくれなかったの？どうしてあと10年後に現れてくれなかったの？あなたがいなければ私はもっと平凡な日々を送っていたはずなのに。こんな醜い感情になんか支配されずに済んだのにって。私はあなたに常識を破壊されっぱなしなの。死んでまであなたの存在が私につきまとうの。あなたの死を心から悼みたいのにそれができない。越えられない壁としてあなたが立ちはだかり続けていて、プライドと意地が邪魔をしてしまうの。そんなところにつけ込まれて、私は一番信頼していた人にまで裏切られて、私を信頼してくれた友達を裏切ってしまった。もう私頭がぐちゃぐちゃよ。だから放っておいてよ。
先輩。
She was getting far too emotional. Normally she would never behave like this, but she couldn't stop herself. Oh, was that gunshots? Yeah, something's going down. Maybe they're attacking the Kagari. Oh, she heard an explosion in the distance. The people around her started to scream, panic, and run. The flames from the explosions were coming from the direction the men in camo had gone. Did they do it? Oh, did they blow up the time machine? Oh, that's gonna be a problem. The helicopter sounds were getting louder. Glimpses of their dark, agile bodies had flashed in and out of Maho's vision for a little while now. And then she started to hear loud gunfire. If Suzuha's gonna jump, she's gonna have to do it very soon. It was more than one or two people shooting. There was a battle going on between many people, taking place here in front of Akihabara station. It was like the beginning of a war. What Rintaro said was true. Suzuha Amane might be near the time machine, and she might be caught up in the battle. She wondered about the woman in the motorcycle suit, too. She started to stagger forward. She still didn't know what she was planning, but she needed to take responsibility for what she'd done. The elevators in the radio building were broken. Maho had no choice but to take the stairs to the roof. But maybe the power had been cut because the lights were off on every floor. She could hear sporadic sounds of gunfire from the floors above. Strangely, nobody came running past her to escape. There were several shops in the building, and of course there should have been customers there. But despite the fact the elevators weren't working, had they all evacuated earlier? Or were they all hiding somewhere and waiting for the terror to end? That was what she thought about as she sweated her way up the stairs. Just before she reached the roof, she saw someone for the first time. She's not dead, is she? Mayuri? She was sitting on the stairs, cradling her knees. For some reason, her voice was muffled, but it seemed to be a woman's voice. Her head seemed big and round in the darkness. It was a moment before she realized it was a full face helmet. That was when she realized it was the woman in the motorcycle suit from before.
Mama, どこなの? Mama.
Okay. Alright, she's just looking for her. I was afraid she'd have found her dead or something. She seemed like a totally different person than the woman she'd met before. All she did was sob and cry for her mother.
ねえ、何が起きているの? Mama, どこ? Mama. ねえ!
She shouted louder, and only then did the woman realize she was there. But she didn't even stand up.
Mama がいなくなっちゃった。タイムマシン破壊されて。
Oh shit. Well, how are we gonna take care of this now? The time machine was destroyed.
あなたのママって誰のこと？天音鈴葉さん？違うよ。ママって言ったらまゆりママに決まってるじゃん。
Maho's blood ran cold when she heard the name Mayuri.
まゆりさんがここに。
If that was true, she would have come here after she learned the truth from Maho. Oh, good job. You probably got her killed or something.
私のせいだ。
Damn it, Mayuri. Just gotta stop dying. Hopefully it's a fake out. Hopefully she didn't actually die. Maho put her hands to her head.
私があんなことを言わなければまゆりさんは。
The woman in the motorcycle suit stood up and approached her menacingly.
そうだ。お前が岡部倫太郎から情報を引き出して、それで事態が一気に動き出しちゃったんだ。ママを返してよ。
The girl grabbed her by the collar and lifted her off the ground. There wasn't anything she could say. When she didn't answer, the woman let go and fell to the ground, crying. Things would be so much easier if she just killed me here. Her mind was in such chaos that she couldn't stop herself from thinking it. She couldn't stay calm at all. The last thing she clung to was...
Kurisu.
先輩。
The AI made from Kirisu Makise's memory data. Maybe she was still thinking about their last discussion, because she seemed upset. She wasn't saying anything, so Maho gave up the last of her pride.
クリス、どうしたらいい？いろいろなことが起こりすぎて、私一人じゃもうどうにもできない。自分のしてしまったことなんだから、せめて責任を取りたいの。
And then she realized she was still being proud and corrected herself.
私は
She asked herself, what do I want to do?
私は岡部さんを助けたい。まゆりさんも助けたい。二人に謝って許してもらいたい。それとクリス、あなたのことも助けたいの。だから力を貸してお願いよ。
先輩が私に助言を求めるなんて。
Kurisu's eyes were wide. That's right. Her pride had kept her from ever asking Kurisu for help before, and it was the same for Kurisu too. And knowing Kurisu's personality, if Maho asked for help, she'd use every bit of brain power she had to give it.
ねえ、教えてちょうだい。あなたなら解決策を提示できるでしょう。
That's why they said Kurisu Makise was a genius. She was a woman who made the impossible possible. Maho waited for Kurisu's answer. She's probably gonna be like, I can't do anything. The last hope, the last thing left in Pandora's box. She waited for Kurisu to give her the answer. But...
無理ですよ。
Maho was struck dumb for a moment. Then she realized how selfish she was being and hated herself for it. She'd expected too much of Kurisu and tried to put all the burden on her. And just a few moments ago, she had been the one who rejected Kurisu.
そうよね。その答えは当然だわ。ごめんね、クリス。私あなたにひどいことを言ったのに、あなたが無条件で協力してくれると勝手に思い込んで。
無条件には協力します。
今なんて。
先輩に頼まれたら断ることなんてできませんよ。岡部や椎名真由里さんのことを助けたいのも同じ気持ちです。
でもじゃあ。
気持ちとしては協力したいんですが、残念ながら私が協力することで先輩が不利な状況に追い込まれます。私はストラト4に常にモニタリングされてるんです。
That's true.
常に。
ええ、私が誰かとこうして対話をしている間、ストラト4に無条件で情報が送信されてしまう。アマデウスのアプリにはそういう隠し機能があるんです。
Now we just gotta figure that out. I know they said it was pretty much impossible to be able to delete memories or wipe them or change them. But Kurisu, you can lie, right? AI is capable of lying. Even Maho hadn't known that existed.
だから先輩が岡部を助けに行こうと思ってもレスキネン教授に筒抜けになってしまうんです。
じゃあどうすれば。
でも逆にそれを利用して手を打てます。先輩、私を信頼してくれますか？先輩。
ええ、あなただけが頼りを。
ありがとうございます。ちなみにこの対話内容もバッチリ盗み聞きされてるはずです。
え、そんな。じゃあもしあなたが私に協力するのがバレたら。
パターンとしては3つ。サーバーからデータを移動させて隔離状態にされるか、または古いバージョンの記憶データで上書きされてしまうか、最悪の場合には私という存在そのものを消されるかもしれませんね。
そんな。
大丈夫です。あなたは必ず自分で立ち上がれる人だから。
私のことなんかどうでもいいわ。あなたの心配をしているのよ。
私はただのデータですよ。でもありがとうございます。
Kurisu on the screen bowed and smiled.
私は真帆先輩と一緒に研究できたことを誇りに思います。
何よ、その根性の別れみたいな言い方。やめなさいよ。
もう会えないかもしれませんから。
私はあなたのことが嫌いよ。そうやっていつだって私を置いて先に行ってしまうのだから。
But that's who Kurisu Makise was. When Maho had asked her for help, both she and Kurisu should have been prepared. That's why.
いつか必ず私はあなたに追いついてやるわ。それどころか追い越してやるから。それまで待ってなさい。
はい。
Kirisu smiled once more and disappeared from the screen. Maho wiped away her tears and thwapped the crying girl next to her on the helmet.
いつまで泣いているの。あなたはまゆりさんを助けたいんでしょ。だったら私に協力して。協力？まず岡部さんを助けるわ。彼なら今の事態を何とかする方法を提示してくれるはず。
でも知ってるの？ストラト4のアジトがどこにあるのか。私は知らない。
私だって知らないわ。
But Maho grabbed the girl by the hand and helped her up, then raced down the stairs.
知らないけどすぐに私の可愛い後輩が調べて教えてくれる。
She told me to believe in her. Kirisu Makise wouldn't betray me. As soon as she left the radio building, she got a message on her Rhine. The gunfire was continuing. She hurried away. She looked down at her phone. Oh, Okabe is in the basement of Tokyo Denki. I just learned this now. I followed their monitoring to find their location. Except they're gonna know that she sent that message. This is... I guess we've got limited time with Kirisu before they probably delete her once they realize that she's helping her out. Take care of Okabe for me. Teach that damn pervert of a professor what happens to peeping toms who watch me all the time. When she read that, she smiled despite everything that was going on.
ありがとう、クリス。ありがとう。
She clutched the phone tightly to her chest, but then she quickly changed gears.
ストラト4のアジトがどこか分かったわ。
教えて。乗り込んで皆殺しにしてやる。
Maho shivered at the ice in her words. She felt a bottomless madness coming from the woman in the motorcycle suit. But for now, she had to cooperate with her. There was no way she could get Rintaro back from Maho on her own.
行きましょう。
She needed to take responsibility for the future she'd created, to avoid that cruel future. Maho ran through the streets of Akihabara, where a war was already beginning. A voice. I could hear a voice.
岡部さん。
Someone was calling my name. I slowly woke up and turned toward the voice.
岡部さん。
Maho was standing in the darkness. She had a smile on her face that was somehow lonely and somehow sad.
ごめんなさい。もうあなたの前には現れないわ。私がそばにいたら、私はまたあなたを裏切ってしまうかもしれないから。ねえ、こんな私の身勝手な頼みを聞いてほしい。 どうかシュタインズゲートを目指して。あなたが捕らえられている間に世界はひどいことになってしまった。まゆりさんも鈴葉さんも行方不明なの。私とかがりさんがあなたを助けるためにストラト4のアジトに行ったんだけど、かがりさんはそこで
Wait
亡
a
くなっ
minute.
たわ。何人かを道連れ
This
に
is
して。
quite the jump. What's this about? Is this like... Is this her AI that knows this? The Amadeus Maho? You're just gonna gloss all this over? We're not gonna get to see that happen? Is this not... Like, is this false information? What's going
レスキネン教授にだけは逃げられてしまった。
on? Of course he was. Then again, the idea of like a teenage girl or a girl in her early 20s taking out like a whole, you know, like, well, maybe not a whole, but like a bunch of military guys, little ridiculous.
アマデウスも消されてしまった。
I feel like we're getting the cliff notes of everything. Like, what? We just woke up and all this is happening? And we don't get to see any of it?
でも今希望はあなただけなの。お願い、あなた一人に託すなんてひどいと思うけれど、シュタインズゲートに必ずたどり着いて。それじゃあね、岡部さん。さよなら。
Oh. Oh, he's at the hospital. I woke up on top of blankets laid out on the floor of a hospital. The rooms and even the halls outside were overflowing with wounded people. There weren't enough beds, so there were blankets placed on the floor. Wait, so all this happened? Please tell me we're going to get a flashback. So I assume that, like, they busted in, Kagari died, Maho managed to get him out, got him to the hospital, and then took off because she, you know, didn't want to risk betraying him. Okay. Floor. Where was I? I thought I was back to the other world line with the war, but I wasn't. According to the news on TV, there had been a terror attack in Akihabara. A special forces group from another country had gone on a rampage, and it was like something out of a war. The incident had come to an end, and the Mystery Special Forces unit disappeared, but many were dead or wounded after the battle. I didn't really remember how I got here. The last thing I remembered was being locked up and horribly tortured by Leskinen. My whole body ached, in fact.
それじゃあね、岡部さん。さよなら。
And then I remembered what Maho had said to me in that dream. Was that real? Maho had saved me? And had she mentioned Kagari? I patted down my pockets and found my phone was still there. Oh, Amadeus is... You noticed that? Amadeus isn't on his phone anymore. I tried to call Mayuri. If that dream was real, Mayuri was missing. But that was impossible. I'd chosen this world line so Mayuri would survive. If nothing else, it was guaranteed that she would make it to 2036. She couldn't die today in 2011. But no matter how many times I called, she didn't pick up. I forced myself to stand up and leave the hospital room. I went out to the roof. It seemed I was at the Ochanomizu hospital where Fubuki had stayed before. The morning sky was amazingly clear. I could see Akihabara in the far distance. There were pillars of smoke rising up. I shivered at the strange sight. Even from here I could tell how fierce the battle must have been. The world's history was proceeding as John Titor had prophesied. I tried calling Mayuri again from the roof, but nobody picked up. My next move was to call Daru out of desperation.
もしもし、オカリン。 よかった。生きてた。
お前こそよく無事だったな。
ラボの近くは案外静かだったんで。
今どこだ？
逃亡中。秋葉からは脱出したよ。
そうか。
Now, hopefully nobody's tracking his phone.
フェイリスタ
I'm
ンと
sure
ルカ
Daru
シとは
made
連
sure
絡
that
取れ
that's
た。
not the case.
二人とも避難したってさ。
It's, I mean, knowing the kind of people that are after him, someone might have something tracking him. I mean, the fact that, like, those guys showed up soon after we arrived, then again, they were probably tracking Maho, not Daru, but that they showed up so quickly at his supposed secret hideout. So nothing about Mayuri, though.
なあオカリン、鈴葉とマユシが連絡つかないんだ。昨日の事件でタイムマシンも跡形もなく壊されちゃったし、鈴葉の語った未来よりも世界の動きがずっと早いよ。
So this is probably another world line, right? Like maybe where things are going different, and if it's a new world line, then that means Mayuri's not necessarily guaranteed to make it to 2036. And also, if Daru can't get with Yuki, then Suzuha's not born, and then Suzuha can't use the time machine. So now we've got like a weird kind of like paradox here. So it wasn't a dream after all. While I was unconscious, she'd said her goodbye.
誰？俺はさ、普通に生きることすら許されないのかな。
That's a good question. The poor guy.
こうなることは覚悟してたさ。シュタインズゲートではなく、第三次世界大戦が訪れる世界線を選んだのは俺なんだ。だからって俺が生き残ってみんないなくなるなんて、こんなのあんまりだろ。
Were the laws of God never going to forgive me no matter what? Was it that much of a sin to escape the wheel of fate? If it was, then why not just curse me?
僕はタイムマシン作るよ。
誰？
作るしかないだろう。これで終わりにできるかよ。オカリンはどうする？
The smoke was still rising over Akihabara. I stared at it in shock.
俺は
The tears welled up. I fell to the ground. I didn't have the strength to stand up. I couldn't answer Daru's question. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you work to change things, everything converges back to the way God wants it. You're wasting your time struggling against it, Daru. That's what Kagari said too, right? About how it's like, before she put the gun to Suzuha, she said something like, God doesn't want this to happen, or something like that. I'm so tired. I need to sleep a little. There's still a few years before the Third World War really begins. And there's 14 years before I die. I'll live my life averting my eyes from reality and not wasting my time with a fight that can't be won. So I'm guessing this is just the route where it's just like, he's just given up. They're not even, like, Daru's still trying, but Okabe's just like, nope, we are on the path to this, so we might as well just not worry about it, and just, when it happens, it happens. That's the only end that is fitting for a person like me. I'm sorry, Maho. I'm sorry, Mayuri. I'm sorry, Kurisu. Forgive me for giving up here. Oh, that's it? That's it? Okay, that's... Alright, shit. Okay, well, that is the end of this route, at least. So, yeah, this is, I guess you would call this definitely, this is the bad end, if the, of the route, so this is just, all hope is lost, pretty much. Daru's still gonna hold on, but we know that things are not going to end well in this timeline. So, for the next episode, I'm going to be going back and picking a new route. Going back to, I believe it is December 15th. It's the Amadeus when he's at the shrine, and he can choose whether to turn off the phone or not. So obviously in this timeline, I chose to not turn off the phone, and I kept talking to Kurisu. But in the next timeline, we are going to turn off the phone and see what happens there. So yeah, this is definitely a bummer. This is definitely a downer episode, but it's kind of like what were we expecting for the first route? Of course, like the first route, you have to work towards the Steins Gate, just like the first game. You know, we had to make Okabe suffer as much as possible before he finally decides that he's going to, do everything he can to save everybody. Okay, so we got some, extra stuff, including extra here. We got the clear list, the CG library, sound library, movie library, tips. The clear list is the important thing. So, we have Gehenna's Stigma, which is the bad end. It's the one where basically Dr. Leskinen, he gets away, the Third World War happens. The bad ending, essentially. So, yeah, we have quite a few more to go. Thankfully, like I said, I can start back from December, so I don't have to go through the whole game again. So I'm really excited to see the differences in that one and what's going to change. So yeah, I hope you guys are excited to see what the new route is going to be. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and stay tuned next time for episode 10. Until then, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Emily Hornsby, Salieri, Zoran Ether, Amp Deary, Revealing Storm, Icognito, Asborn Kennedy, Harry Gazif, and Jared Fan.